Spider-Man becomes the host of the Carnage symbiote to create Spider-Carnage in this week's episode of Comic History. What's up guys, Roman from RNS Entertainment here, and welcome back to this week's episode of Comic History, the series where we go over the iconic origins and storylines in the world of comics. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Spider-Carnage, the combination of Ben Reilly, clone of Peter Parker who temporarily took the place and mantle of Spider-Man during the infamous Clone Saga period in the 90s, and the Carnage symbiote, the alien offspring of Venom, Spider-Man's deadliest enemy. I've gone over the origins of Venom, Carnage, and many different symbiote stories in previous episodes, so if you want to learn more about these characters, you can check out those videos in the Comic History playlist on my channel. As I mentioned before, this story takes place during the Clone Saga, an epic storyline that spanned years of Spider-Man comics throughout the 90s. And without delving too much into it, the premise was that Ben Reilly, the first successful clone of Peter Parker from the original and much less talked about Clone Saga in the 70s, returns to the real Spider-Man's life during a time of intense mental stress and turmoil, and for a time was believed to be the real Peter Parker, with actual Peter Parker believing himself to be the clone. Ben Reilly then takes up the role of Spider-Man for a long time during the Clone Saga, starring as the main Spider-Man in the multiple Spider titles coming out at the time, with the actual Peter Parker becoming depowered and giving the mantle up to Ben. Web of Carnage, the storyline we're covering today, occurs during this time and functions as the origin of Spider-Carnage. At the beginning of our story, Ben Reilly as Spider-Man and the depowered Peter Parker are working together to patch up the holes in their backstory, with the original Spider-Man having thrown the apparently dead Ben Reilly into a smokestack in the original 70s Clone Saga. The Jackal had claimed to have saved Ben and had left a skeleton behind, which was confirmed by the Avengers to be yet another clone of Peter Parker, casting even more doubt over which one of them was the original. Ben is also dating a woman named Jessica Carradine, who he finds out is actually the daughter of the man who killed Uncle Ben. Jessica's strange obsession and hatred of Spider-Man, who she believes killed her father, leads her to take a job at the Daily Bugle where she hopes to provide incriminating pictures of Spider-Man. During this time, a rash of killings begins to happen in the city, all bearing the signs of carnage, and Ben Reilly begins to investigate the Ravencroft Institute, the high-tech psych ward/prison where Cletus Cassidy has been kept. Cletus remains in his cell, which is built of multiple layers of metal alloy with deadly amounts of radiation pumped between the layers to keep the symbiote contained. But Ben decides to follow the Ravencroft employees to make sure there's no way the symbiote had escaped. He follows a guard named Dickerson to an underground club centered on selling memorabilia and items related to supervillains, where Dickerson had been illegally selling items he had taken from his job at Ravencroft. Shortly after they arrive, Carnage bursts through the wall and attacks the crowd, with Spider-Man fighting to stop him and realizing that the man inside the symbiote was not Cletus Cassidy, being taller, more muscular, and having a different manner of speaking. This new Carnage destroys the support beams to the building, dropping debris on Spider-Man and managing to escape. Reilly then follows John Jameson, son of J. Jonah Jameson and security chief of the Ravencroft Institute, and when Jameson notices Spider-Man following him, he bursts through the roof of his car as Carnage, threatening to kill innocent civilians and revealing that the symbiote can tell that this has been Reilly and not the original Spider-Man. Reilly fights with Carnage, telling Jameson to talk to him to fight the symbiote and help him remove it, and John warns him that the symbiote is only using him to find a stronger, more suitable host. And suddenly the symbiote leaves Jameson and swirls around Spider-Man, who panics and screams out "No!" as the Carnage symbiote merges with him, infecting his mind and rebirthing him as Carnage. Spider-Carnage leaps around the streets, destroying cars and attacking random people, having the insane philosophy of Carnage fill his mind, telling him that he is free from the laws of society, free to strike back at anyone who had ever harmed him. At this point, Jessica Carradine, who was nearby during Spider-Man's confrontation with Jameson, sees her chance to take incriminating pictures of Spider-Man attacking civilians, and doesn't flee the scene. And as the Carnage symbiote realizes that she means something to Reilly, it tells him she will be the first to die at their hands. Ben fights the symbiote in his mind, temporarily managing to subdue it and yelling at Jessica to get away, scaring her into dropping her camera and then web-swinging away. Later that day, Peter Parker goes to Ben Reilly's apartment to talk to him about their research into the skeleton, and the Carnage symbiote tells Ben to kill him, repeating it over and over in his mind and telling him that it would ensure he was the only Spider-Man left. Ben opens the door and barely manages to keep the Carnage symbiote at bay during their conversation, twitching and keeping his face turned away while the symbiote tries to force him to murder his depowered predecessor. When Peter asks Ben to go with him to speak with Seward Trainer, Ben Reilly's supporting character who told them that Peter was the clone in the first place, Ben screams at him and tells him to leave, barely keeping the Carnage symbiote from making him rip Peter's arm off. The symbiote tortures Riley in his mind, demanding that he kill Peter, devolving into screaming the word kill over and over in his thoughts. Ben throws himself out of the window, following Peter to the hospital where Seward Trainer was last located, yelling out "Kill!" Peter finds that Seward is no longer at the hospital, and Spider-Carnage fights off several rent-a-cops on the hospital roof. Peter runs up to the roof and finds John Jameson's men from Ravencroft having flown in on a helicopter, being beaten down by Spider-Carnage, who manages to stay in enough control to not kill them. Peter smashes a broken section of wall into Spider-Carnage, and with a single hit, Spider-Carnage knocks him off the side of the roof, with Peter only managing to grab onto the ledge because of his experience as the former Spider-Man. Spider-Carnage prepares to kill Peter, who tells Ben to fight it, that it's a symbiote, and therefore needs him to do anything. And Ben manages to once again control himself, telling Peter to stay away from Seward Trainer and leaping away. Out of desperation, Spider-Carnage tries to bury the symbiote's insane shrieking in his mind with responsibility, trying to act as Spider-Man by breaking up a violent mugging in an alley. The Carnage symbiote floods his mind with visions of the entire alley of people ripped to shreds around him, but Riley manages to yell at all of the people, victims and muggers, to get away, resolving to get answers on the symbiote from the one person who knows it best. Meanwhile, at the Ravencroft Institute, Cletus Cassidy has been deteriorating physically without the Carnage symbiote, his body decaying away from the symbiote having bonded so completely with his blood. He's been washing his hands obsessively and creepily smiling as the Ravencroft staff fails to find ways to keep him alive. Spider-Carnage breaches the Ravencroft perimeter, and John Jameson deploys his men, who blast Spider-Carnage with radiation-based weapons. But Spider-Carnage fights through the men easily and barely manages not to kill them. He fights his way to Cassidy's cell, and Cletus says that he knew the symbiote would miss him and come back, and that Spider-Man was lucky to have its insanity inside his head. And inside Riley's mind, the Carnage symbiote tries to assert control, saying that it wants him to be a weak sack of meat that Carnage can play with. But Spider-Man refuses to relinquish control and fights the symbiote influence back down. Cletus Cassidy calls to the Carnage symbiote, which tries to leave Riley to return to its true host, and Riley continues fighting it in his mind, unwilling to allow Carnage to become whole again, intending to keep the symbiote trapped within him to prevent it from killing more people. Spider-Carnage has Jameson lock him in a cell just like Cassidy's, and Jameson tries to pump the room full of radiation to weaken the symbiote, and Riley tells him to turn it on full power, which blasts the Carnage symbiote completely out of Spider-Man's body, with the symbiote immediately going through the faucet in the cell's sink, revealing how it had escaped initially and returning to Cletus Cassidy, who laughs triumphantly in his cell for hours afterwards. And that is the end of Web of Carnage, 4 issues in the Clone Saga across 4 different Spider-Man titles where Ben Reilly Spider-Man becomes bonded with the Carnage symbiote. The Clone Saga was a convoluted mess, and though one of the best-selling comics of all time has gone down in infamy as an unplanned, poorly executed clusterfuck that lasted years and did crazy things with Spider-Man's character, it also, for better or worse, cemented Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, and for a long period of time the only Spider-Man, as a major Spider character who would continue to be present throughout Spider-Man's history. At the time of this video, Riley has resurfaced once again in the Clone Conspiracy storyline, and will afterwards be getting his own series reprising his role as Scarlet Spider, so the character has at the very least survived the test of time. Web of Carnage is a fairly dumb and repetitive storyline in my opinion. Ben Reilly is Carnage, Carnage tries to make him kill people, he manages to not kill people, the end. But what is interesting about it is seeing a Spider-Man be bonded with Carnage, which honestly is a big moment for people who enjoy symbiotes. And the fact that Reilly was constantly able to subdue the Carnage symbiote and not murder people is impressive, if only a result of editorial mandate and the need for their new Spider-Man character they wanted to push to not kill people. If you enjoyed this video or learned something new, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and if you want to know more about Carnage, Venom, or a number of other symbiote and Spider-Man characters, check out the other videos I've done so far. All of the episodes can easily be found on the Comic History playlist on my channel. Also, feel free to request things you'd like to see Comic History episodes in the comments. I do like to cover things you guys want to see. And if there's an episode you really want to make sure I do, there is an option for you to commission any storyline you'd like, even Walking Dead character spotlights, for $25, which is really just to cover me buying the book so I can read it, along with being a massive help in supporting my channel. We're not a huge channel yet, but I still want to make sure I can devote my full time and effort into making more great content for you guys. If you want to follow me on social media, check out my Twitter at Roman_RNS. Go like us on Facebook at facebook.com/RNS Entertainment Channel, and go follow my Instagram, Fusion Cosplay.